My name is Mia, and I graduated with a degree in computer programming, already holding a job offer from Soft Tech Solutions thanks to an internship that turned into a rare early opportunity. With a decent starting salary, I could have easily moved out and started fresh. But when my parents asked me to stay a bit longer, to help with bills that were piling up and a household that had grown too heavy for them, I agreed. They'd supported me through everything, and $1,000 a month felt like a small price to pay for all they had done. So, at 22, I became the financial backbone of my family. I lived modestly, socked away the rest of my income, and didn't care much for luxuries. My older sister, Lana, was the opposite. 7 years my senior, she lived across town in a stylish rented apartment with her husband Kyle and their son, Ethan. Their lifestyle looked glamorous on the surface. Designer clothes, fine dining, constant vacations. But underneath, it was built on shaky financial ground. Lana, who worked part-time at a boutique to fight boredom, never missed a chance to make her wealth-styled life known. During one of her weekly visits, she eyed my basic t-shirt with disdain. "Are you seriously wearing that shirt again?" she scoffed, scrolling through her phone with an air of superiority. "You were wearing that on Facebook last year. Don't you buy new clothes?" I shrugged. "They still work." Her sigh was heavy with judgment. "No wonder you're still single. You dress like you shop at Goodwill." I bit back the urge to remind her that unlike her, I wasn't drowning in debt. She and Kyle earned well but spent even better. Lavish purchases, overpriced meals, all for the sake of appearances. Later that day, her tone changed. In the kitchen while I washed dishes, she suddenly softened. "Hey, Mia," she said sweetly. "Can I borrow $200? There's this dress I've been eyeing, and I'm just a little short this month." I sighed. It wasn't the first time. "Sure," I said, wiping my hands. She hugged me quickly, all smiles. "This is why you're my favorite sister." But what she didn't realize was that every request, every cutting remark, every assumption that I would always say yes, was slowly writing the prologue to a quiet, calculated revenge. Because one day, I would stop saying yes, and on that day, they'd all realize the difference between spending like you're rich and actually being secure enough not to have to prove it. "I'm your only sister," I reminded Lana, but she barely acknowledged me, already texting someone, probably to brag that she could afford the dress after all. While she lived in a fantasy built on credit and denial, I spent my nights buried in code, developing a smart home security app I believed could truly make waves, an intelligent system that would integrate seamlessly with existing cameras and provide customizable alerts no current product could match. But to my parents, my late-night programming looked like idle gaming. "Mia, it's almost midnight. Why are you still on that computer?" Mom sighed from the doorway in her robe. "You're running up the electricity bill." I didn't even look up. "Just finishing something." Minutes later, I overheard Dad grumbling. "All she does is play those stupid games. No wonder she can't find a boyfriend." I didn't bother correcting them. What was the point? They couldn't begin to understand the work I was doing, or how close I was to something real. But I had no idea my quiet life, built on patience and discipline, was about to be shattered. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I came home to a driveway crammed with unfamiliar cars and the front door propped open with a box. Inside, chaos. Boxes, suitcases, furniture piled everywhere. Lana stood in the middle of it all, directing our parents like hired movers. "What's going on?" I asked, stunned. "Are you moving in?" Kyle emerged from the hallway, disheveled and exhausted. Lana didn't miss a beat. "Kyle lost his job," she announced. "Can you believe how unfair they were to him? His own friend turned on him." I turned to Kyle, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. It's complicated, he muttered. They called it creative accounting during the audit, Lana added defensively. He was borrowing money from the company. He was going to pay it back. You mean he was stealing? I asked carefully. Silence. My parents looked everywhere but at me. Lana's expression turned vicious. That's a horrible thing to say. Real friends understand when you're in a tight spot. I let it drop. Logic had no place in a room ruled by Lana's version of the truth. That night over dinner, Mom broke the news. Lana, Kyle, and their son Ethan would be staying just until they get back on their feet. I nodded, already bracing for the disaster ahead. It didn't take long. Kyle found another job quickly, but it paid half what he'd made before, and he let everyone know about it. Lana kept her boutique job, working just enough to claim she was pulling her weight, while doing nothing of the sort. Their presence consumed the house like a slow flood, loud, entitled, messy. This chicken is so dry, Lana sneered one night, pushing away her plate. Mom, don't you know how to season food? We used to eat at Bellissimo's every Thursday. Their food was amazing. I sat in silence, watching the same sister who once mocked my Goodwill shirt now insult our parents while living in their home rent-free. And the worst part? They let her. She was chaos. But I was patient. I was building something she couldn't even comprehend. And she had no idea that this time, the quiet one was going to be the one to rise. Instead of defending her perfectly fine chicken or asking Lana to cook for once, Mom simply nodded with a quiet, "I'm sorry, dear. I'll try to do better next time," as if Lana's petty complaints were gospel. I stabbed at my food and bit my tongue, watching the power shift in the household unfold like a poorly scripted drama. Lana had taken center stage, her problems becoming communal crises, her whims granted as if she were royalty. Meanwhile, I, the one paying the bills, had been reduced to background noise. One night, while I was fine-tuning the final touches on my security app, Lana barged into my room without so much as a knock. "I need to borrow $300, she said, her tone as blunt as a demand. "Noah needs new shoes and we're taking him to the amusement park this weekend. He's been so upset since we moved here." "Didn't Kyle just get paid?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We have other expenses," she snapped, arms crossed like I owed her. I gave in. Once. But when she asked again the following week, and had the audacity to do it in front of everyone at dinner, I finally pushed back. "Maybe you should consider working full-time," I said, keeping my tone even. "The boutique's hiring. I saw the sign." Lana's face flushed with fury. "I can't believe how cruel you are," she hissed. "You know I need to be there for Noah after school." "Mom and Dad are always here. They could help for a couple hours," I reasoned. "That's not the point," she shouted, tossing her napkin and storming out. Kyle followed with a dagger-like glare. "Mia," Mom sighed, shaking her head in disappointment. "How could you be so heartless? Your sister is going through a hard time." I muttered, "We're all going through a hard time," but it fell on deaf ears. Lana didn't speak to me for a week, which turned out to be a blessing. In that rare silence, I finished my app, my months-long passion project built between dinner disasters and quiet sacrifices. I finally presented it to my boss, Leo. His eyes widened as I walked him through it. Motion detection that differentiated between humans and animals, real-time smart alerts, a sleek, intuitive interface. "This is incredible," he said. "You built all of this?" I nodded. "It's been my side project." Leo leaned back, the gears clearly turning. "Mia, this could revolutionize the home security market. I'm prepared to offer you $500,000 for full ownership, plus a percentage of future sales. What do you think?" My heart thudded like a drum. $500,000. And royalties? I swallowed my disbelief. "That sounds fair," I said calmly, as if I negotiated six-figure deals every day. We shook hands. I walked out of that office in a daze, wealthy, validated, and finally free. But as I drove home, I made one very deliberate decision. I wouldn't tell my family. If they knew, that money would vanish into Lana's designer bags and my parents' constant enabling. That night, I called Sarah, a realtor friend. Sitting in my car in the driveway, I whispered, "I need a place of my own. I want to buy. Close to work. Move-in ready. Can you help?" "Absolutely," she replied. "I already have a few places in mind. Let's meet tomorrow." I smiled into the night. My escape was officially underway. When I walked into the house that evening, the unusual silence and tight formation of my family in the living room immediately set off alarms. Mom gestured to the space beside her on the couch. "Mia, we need to talk," she said, her tone laced with rehearsed concern. I sat down cautiously. Dad cleared his throat and launched into a speech about rising expenses. 5 adults under one roof, a growing child, soaring utility bills, and vanishing groceries. Mom continued, her voice soft but firm, explaining that the $1,000 I'd been contributing was no longer enough. "We were hoping you could increase it to $2,000 a month," Dad added carefully. I scanned the room. My parents looked sheepish yet hopeful. Lana, pretending innocence, was busy inspecting her nails, while Kyle at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Are Lana and Kyle contributing anything?" I asked coolly. Awkward silence. "They're in a difficult position," Mom finally murmured. "And you're single. No kids. You can afford it." My jaw clenched, but I nodded. "Fine. Starting this month." Lana finally looked up, a smug little smile forming on her lips. She thought she'd won. What she didn't know was that her victory was about to unravel spectacularly. 3 days later, I met with Sarah, my realtor friend, who showed me a gorgeous top-floor one-bedroom apartment just 10 minutes from my office. It was bright, modern, and had a balcony that overlooked the skyline. I used part of the money from selling my app to purchase it outright and signed the papers that same day. Quietly, while they were all busy being entitled, I began furnishing my new space in secret. Back at home, I noticed strange glances exchanged between Mom, Dad, and Lana at dinner. Furtive, smug little looks that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Kyle kept his eyes on his plate. Something was brewing, and I didn't have to wait long to discover what. 2 days later, I came home from work and found a pile of my belongings dumped unceremoniously in the hallway. Clothes, books, my laptop, even my childhood stuffed bear. Stunned, I dropped my bag and stormed to my room, only it wasn't my room anymore. Noah sat on my bed, now dressed in superhero sheets, gleefully mashing buttons on a game controller. My programming certificates had been replaced by cartoon posters. My desk, the place I'd built my career, was gone, replaced by a crayon-covered plastic table. "Aunt Mia!" Noah beamed. "Check out my new room." Rage simmered just beneath my skin as Lana casually appeared in the doorway. "Oh, you're home," she said, feigning surprise. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice a razor's edge. "We moved Noah into your room," she said with a shrug, like it was nothing. "He needs more space for schoolwork and his things." "And where, exactly, am I supposed to sleep?" I asked, barely keeping my tone civil. Behind her, Mom appeared, wringing her hands nervously. It was clear. They'd planned this. Together. Without a word to me. They had pushed me out of my own space in the very home I paid for. But that's the moment I stopped being angry, because I knew something they didn't. I was already gone. Mia, dear, we thought since you're hardly ever home, always at work or on that computer, you wouldn't mind sleeping on the sofa, Mom said gently, her voice laced with false concern. I glanced at her, then at Lana, whose smirk practically screamed victory. So you moved all my things without asking? I asked, my voice calm but tight. We knew you'd make a fuss if we did, Lana replied breezily. Noah really needed the space. His old room was tiny. I took a slow breath. Then why can't I use his old room? That's when they shared another one of those secret glances, and Mom answered, Well, we thought Lana could use a dressing room. She has so many clothes and there's just no space in her room with Kyle. I stared at them, stunned. My childhood bedroom, essentially funded by the $2,000 I gave them every month, had been converted into a walk-in closet for my unemployed sister. I looked at her designer outfit, then back at the pile of my things dumped unceremoniously in the hallway like they were leftovers. But instead of shouting or crying, I simply shrugged. You know what? That's fine, I said coolly. I won't be sleeping on the sofa, because I'll be in my own apartment. Lana laughed, eyes sparkling with mockery. Right. Your imaginary apartment. Give it up, Mia. Everyone knows you're too cheap to move out. I held her gaze. Actually, I bought one last week. I was going to tell you all this weekend, but I guess you made the decision easier. Mom and Lana blinked in disbelief. You bought an apartment? Mom echoed. How? With what money? That doesn't matter, I said, already heading downstairs. What matters is that I'm moving out, tomorrow. I called the moving company and scheduled the earliest slot they had. 7 a.m. I even called my boss and asked for the day off. As I made arrangements, the air in the house thickened with their unease. Dad finally emerged from the garage, brows furrowed. Mia, you can't be serious. I looked at him directly. I've never been more serious. Movers will be here in the morning. If you're upset about the room, we can talk about it, Mom offered quickly. Maybe Noah can share with us again. It's not about the room, I cut in. It's about respect, about boundaries. I've been giving you $2,000 a month and still you treat me like an afterthought. Lana, suddenly defensive, scoffed. Wait, are you actually saying you bought an apartment? On a junior developer's salary? I didn't bother answering. I'll be packing now, I said simply, walking past them and toward the pile of my displaced life. The next morning, the movers arrived right on time. I pointed them to the hallway, where my belongings now sat neatly boxed, and they began carrying them out one by one. My family watched from the living room in stunned silence, like witnesses to a ritual they had never expected. Dad finally broke the silence. Where exactly is this apartment? Near my office, I replied without elaborating. How much did it cost? Lana demanded. And how did you afford it? I turned to face them, all gathered like spectators of a ship setting sail. That's not really any of your business, I said coolly. We're your family, Mom said, her voice cracking. Of course it's our business. I met her eyes for a long moment. Family respects each other, I said softly. Family doesn't treat one member like a piggy bank while giving another a dressing room in someone else's house. I may not have kids, but I'm not your child anymore, and I'm done being treated like one. Then I turned, walked out the front door, and stepped into a new chapter, not in anger, but with peace. Because some boundaries don't need negotiation, they just need to be drawn. Family works both ways, Mom, I said evenly, my gaze unwavering. And for a long time, it's only gone one way in this house. Lana straightened, arms crossed, bristling. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped. I didn't hesitate. It means I'm done being everyone's ATM. I'm done handing over money that's never enough, never appreciated, and never handled responsibly. Mom's eyes welled with tears. So you're abandoning us? What about the bills? The groceries? I shrugged. What about them? Lana and Kyle are grown adults with jobs. Let them contribute for once. Lana huffed. We can barely afford our own expenses. Then maybe, I said coolly, you should rethink the weekly shopping sprees and $200 haircuts. Her cheeks flushed scarlet. You know what? You should just give us your apartment. We need it more than you do. We have a child. I laughed aloud, sharp and involuntary. The audacity, Lana. No, you're not getting my apartment. I'm not giving you anything. Not anymore. Just then, one of the movers poked her head into the hallway. Miss, everything's loaded. Ready when you are? I grabbed my purse, offering a final glance around the house. I'm ready. Mia, please, Mom called after me, her voice breaking. Don't leave like this. I turned to her, soft but resolute. I'll call you in a few days. Goodbye. As I followed the moving truck to my new apartment, a lightness settled into my chest, like I was exhaling years of invisible pressure. For once, I was choosing myself. The next week blurred by in a mix of deliveries, decorating, and the sweet hum of silence. I kept my phone off, knowing full well what was waiting for me. And sure enough, when I finally powered it back on, the screen flooded with missed calls and texts, ranging from tearful apologies to pointed accusations to desperate pleas. I ignored them all. But after a week, I decided to return for one last conversation, to lay down boundaries and make them crystal clear. As I pulled into the driveway that Saturday morning, I saw the curtains flutter. They'd been watching for me. Before I could even knock, Mom flung the door open and wrapped me in a hug. Thank goodness, she whispered. We were so worried. Dad hovered behind her, equal parts relieved and uncomfortable. In the living room, Lana and Kyle were already seated, Noah playing on the rug with building blocks. I'm not moving back, I said before anyone could speak. I just came to talk. Mom nodded quickly. Of course, of course. We've all been thinking a lot. I raised an eyebrow but took a seat anyway. Mia, Dad began, you were right. We crossed a line. Your room is yours again. Noah's moved back to his. And I didn't turn it into a dressing room, Lana added hastily. I can make space in our room. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that, but I'm happy in my new apartment. But we miss you, Mom said, voice thick with emotion. We need you. There it was, the truth. I looked at her, calm and clear-eyed. You need my money. No one disagreed. We could work something out, Lana offered, her tone syrupy. You keep your place, but still help us with bills. Or maybe we could move into your apartment and you come back here? I nearly laughed at the audacity. No, Lana, I'm not giving you my apartment, and I'm done funding your lifestyle. That's not fair, she burst out. You're so selfish. How did you even afford that place? You must have been hiding money for years. I met her glare head-on. I sold the security app I developed, the one I worked on every night, the one you all mocked as a video game. The room fell silent. Finally, Lana sat back, stunned. You're serious? Dead serious. I stood, slipping my keys into my bag. From now on, I'll help in ways that don't cost me my peace. If you want my respect, or my support, you'll have to earn it. I left them there, speechless. This time, I wasn't running away. I was walking into the life I built, on my own, unapologetically. I sold my app to my boss for $500,000 plus royalties, and the silence that followed was deafening. $500,000? Kyle finally choked out, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom looked pale, stunned. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. I met her gaze without flinching. "Because I knew exactly what would happen. You'd find reasons why you deserved that money more than I did." No one argued. "So you're just abandoning us now?" Lana demanded, her voice heavy with manufactured betrayal. "After everything we've done for you?" I stood slowly, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. "What exactly have you done for me, Lana? Borrow money you never paid back? Mock my clothes? Hijack my room and toss my things out without even asking?" She didn't have an answer. I looked at each of them in turn. Mom, Dad, Kyle, even Noah blissfully unaware, and said evenly, "I'll always be your daughter and your sister, but I'm done being your bank." As I walked out, their voices rose behind me, calling me ungrateful, selfish, heartless. But for the first time, those words didn't sting. They didn't carry weight. They didn't define me. That was 6 months ago. I haven't spoken to my family since, though they've tried reaching out, always with messages cloaked in guilt, but anchored in money. Apologies laced with requests. Through mutual acquaintances, I hear they're still all living together, still scraping by, still blaming me for their financial mess, now dressed up as abandonment. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. My apartment is warm, peaceful, entirely mine. My career is soaring, my app royalties steadily flowing in. I've started traveling, quiet, spontaneous trips that require no explanations or permission. I bought clothes I like, simple but elegant, and began dating someone who values substance over style, someone who admires the very traits my family belittled. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I made the right call. Then I remember the exhaustion, the constant giving with nothing in return, and how I was treated, not as a loved one, but as a convenience, a wallet with a pulse. And I realized leaving wasn't selfish. It was survival. I didn't abandon my family, I saved myself.